God, thank you for a beautiful day, for these beautiful women, and for your beautiful gospel that we have been blessed to apprehend through different milestones in our lives, so that you've brought us to this day and this point in our faith. Help us to articulate the reasons why we believe and honor your name. We ask it in your Son's name and for his glory. Amen. Amen. Okay, so hi. So we're continuing the series Reasons to Believe, which is sort of a second half to what we've been doing all year, which is talking about things that cause us to either doubt or believe. So the first bit of our year, we were talking about a series that was called Dealing with Doubt. Go back and watch it if you'd like. We talk about some of the things that people around us or even that we have some doubts about. A big one was Jonah. Did he really get swallowed by a whale? Is that something we can believe? And so this bit, we're flipping it over a little bit. Instead of talking about the things that cause us to doubt, we're talking about the things that strengthen our faith in this series called Reasons to Believe. And so I'm excited to have each of you. I mean, I think this has been a great series because it actually gives me a little bit more insight into your testimony. I feel like I know you girls pretty well, but I love the stories of your testimony. And so we'll do introductions and then we'll get right in. I'll start with a couple of my reasons and then we'll let it out for you all to do your thing. Sound good?
Yes.
Okay. Who wants to start?
I can start. I am Jan. I've lived in Bucks County for about 25 years. Grew up in Philly. I have 2 adult sons. I attend a Baptist church. Real simple.
Okay, my name is Rachel. I am from Philly, and I'm also a college student, not in Philly. And
someplace else.
And yeah, I'm almost done with that. And I go to a non-denominational church.
Hi, I'm Kate, and I'm also a college student, and I'm from the Bucks County area, and I attend a non-denominational church.
And I'm Holly. Everybody already knows me, so I won't waste time with introduction. Okay, so we're talking about reasons to believe. This is our honorary member, Max. I'm not sure if any of the camera angles are getting Max, but he's on the floor. He's always present, our ever-present extra. So we're talking about reasons to believe. Last recording, I shared that really, I know it sounds maybe trite to some people, but after doing a lot of work in understanding the things that I had doubts about, or the things that people brought to me that they had doubts about that I couldn't deal with, which I didn't like not having an answer for why I believed what I believed. So for probably 20 years, I just spent a lot of time in reading books and listening to podcasts and watching YouTube videos of people who really could defend and articulate the faith better than I could, which I highly recommend. But after all that, at the end of the day, I really would say the core reason that I feel that our faith is reasonable is because of the resurrection. And I talked about that a little bit on the last recording, that the resurrection is testable, that it is attested to by lots of sources inside and outside of the Bible. And so for me, because Jesus rose from the dead, that certifies everything that he said before he died. And that for me is I want to say cornerstone, which is what the Bible calls Jesus, that is really the foundation for me to go back and look at the entire Bible as truth, all the prophecy as truth, because his words would have passed away if he hadn't risen from the dead. His life would have passed away. He would not have been noticed. He would have been one among many at that time who claimed to be a Messiah. And so because he raised from the dead, it really testifies to everything else that happened before he came, and all the things that he said, and all the ways that he quoted the Old Testament. And so for me, that really helps me to piece together this puzzle of our faith and how all of it fits. But building on that, I wanted to say a couple other things about God's word. So for me, there's two really strong testimonies that I think are worth just mentioning in passing. One, and they really affirm my belief in our faith and in the Bible. The first one is logic. And that, what I mean by that is, if you were going to start a faith, it seems to me illogical to start a faith that the foundational message was everyone is bad. That doesn't feel like a balloon that's going to float for very long, right? And so that sin is so real and that it's so entrenched in us. I mean, that is not a positive message. You know, you go into Barnes & Noble and there's this whole self-help, and one of the core messages of self-help books is you can do it. You've got it. You have it in you. Just dig deep or breathe better or whatever. And so, but this self-help, and the foundation of our faith is you can't do it on your own. And that's not a message that people like. And so logically, I think the only reason that a faith like that can survive through 2,000 years is because at our core, we know it's true. We see it in our everyday lives. We lay our head down at night and feel the density of our own failures that day. And it resounds. You know, we look at the world around us, the people around us, the relationships that we have, and it's broken. And we know that. And so we don't talk a lot about that as far as why we believe in our faith. It's just something for us that have been doing it for such a long time. It's just sort of baked in. But when you take it, pull that one piece out in isolation, it actually is a great affirmation why this faith stands the test of time. It resounds in our spirit as true. And then the other bit of logic that I think we can apply to our faith that is a testimony is the unity of the Bible. So 40 different writers, 3 different languages, all different life scenarios, kings and shepherds, and yet this Bible has a very unified theme. Everything about the construction of it would dictate that it was disconnected, disunified, but it's super unified. And so for me, that speaks to divine authorship. And so I could talk all day about both of those things, but those are sort of my brainiac like moments that again, we don't sit in the pews and talk much about that stuff. But if you take it out of the context of your whole faith experience and you just look at that one thing, it makes sense. And it gives me, for my personality, which is always questioning and always skeptical, and why did that happen and how did that happen? For me, it gives me a lot of great reasons to know that I'm not just drinking the Kool-Aid, that there's something real here. And like I said, for a long, long time, I really needed to challenge my faith and hear those things. And these are things for me that have been impactful. That's not to say that I know these are thinky things. It's not to say that I haven't had hard experiences. I have. I've shared those in dribs and drabs throughout the entire course of this ministry. So I hope that nobody thinks that I'm just thinking about my faith. I'm feeling my faith. But I'm a person who needs to also know that this faith stands up to thinking. And I love those little nuggets that remind me that it really does. So that's my little moment of why I believe. I get to be here all the time, so I'll drip those out on the next series as well. But is that are those things impactful for you guys? Absolutely. Or are you just like, that's not really what scratches the itch for me?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
We need more coffee.
No, I agree. Especially like something that's been impactful for me is like knowing all those things. And I've also like watched a lot of YouTube videos, like read books and stuff like that. And that was something that was important for me. And like, I remember I watched the movie like Case for Christ. You know what that is? And that's kind of what like sparked that for me. And I was like, I need to know more. And like, now that definitely is something that I go back to if I ever have like doubts or anything.
Yeah. Can I ask you a question about that? Did you feel like you had to really dig in because you're a pastor's kid and you wanted to just have it as your own thing? Or did you feel like it was just something that was a natural course of your faith maturity?
No, I think it was more just for me. Like I kind of already knew some of the stuff like growing up because I am a pastor's kid. But like, I guess it was like, I needed that for me and like to actually be able to like resonate in my head, not just because like, oh, well, my parents believe it. So, you know, I should believe it too. I trust them. So that was something that, like, you know, I wanted to know for myself, especially like if I'm talking to someone who's a non-believer or something, being able to give an argument to it, like historically and scientifically, I believe it as well. Like not just because I feel it, you know?
Yeah. It's
or because
doubly,
my parents feel it.
It's doubly uncomfortable if you can't answer somebody's question because you feel like you failed that moment in them. And then you also go back and you're like, hey, now, wait a minute. Why can't I answer that question? I think it is a natural course of a lot of people's faith, their maturity, to start to ask the harder questions, you know, and unpack some of the things that don't feel like they make sense. Even in seminary, I'm in seminary right now still. And there's stuff that just this class that I'm in right now, the professor just hit it head on. And I was like, oh, he's going for it. Like those questions that everybody's like, you know what, let's just let's just not, or and he was like, don't just say it takes faith, it's faith. Like there are things we need to unpack. There are difficult conversations we need to have. And he was really kind of aggressive about it. And I was like, okay, King, you go ahead and get that. But I was glad to have somebody who continued to help me grow because, you know, there are a lot of conversations that we just kind of skirt by, hard pieces of the Bible that we just, or hard pieces of theology that we just are like, look, we don't understand it all. And that's okay. It's okay to land and say, I don't understand exactly the mystery of the Trinity. That's okay. But it doesn't mean you shouldn't examine it and try and listen to people who are smarter and have thought longer about it than you have. And so I do think that there's a sort of a journey where most people will hit a question like this or several questions like this. So I was interested to hear like which intersection you felt like it arrived at. Yeah, that's good. Okay. Do you guys want to tell me your reasons? Go ahead, girl.
Well,
she's smiling. She's ready.
well, no, it's when you first sent the assignment out. And I was remembering all these things that had happened and my own personal testimonies. And then I had the occasion to read Hannah again. And Hannah, although that was not the first time I read it, it just lit up. And there were so many takeaways here. I've got all these notes.
I love it. Do it.
There were so many takeaways from her story that all of the testimonies that I've heard from other people and all of my personal testimonies now looked, it legitimized everything.
So wait, are you saying there was a sameness, sort of a thread that ran through all of them?
That ran through, that the faith that I have, even before I visited Hannah again, and almost in a way, I almost stumbled into it, where many years ago something happened, and it was like the worst thing that ever happened to me, and I felt broken in 1,000 pieces, and I ain't broken no more. That's my good English. I ain't broken no more.
I love it. It's impactful.
but to get there, I remember throwing my hands in the air and says, I have no idea what I'm doing here. I don't know whether to go left, whether to go right. And I had come to the end of myself. I didn't know that then. but I know what it was then. And it wasn't until then, that moment, that I knew I had any peace. Because I knew, like you were saying earlier, how you know that you know where your help's coming from, and it's not you. So when that was going to be the centerpiece of my whole conversation today, right? Until I read Hannah. And a lot's going on with Hannah. Hannah had a big problem. She was barren. And she was being harassed, let's say, by the other wife who had children. And, she was barren. Being barren wasn't a good thing during those times, because you were all about, that was why you were even on earth as far as they were concerned, to give birth. Other than that, they considered you pretty useless. So I watched how Hannah just kept praying her way through. I wrote stuff down. So it was just so much going on here. It didn't pay attention to that at first. She just prayed her way through, just kept praying. And she wept and she prayed and she wept and she prayed and she wept. And I thought, okay. So she stayed the course and she kept going to the temple. And then remember the part where even the priest thought that she was drunk because she was weeping bitterly, and the priest thought. So Hannah also taught me you can't pay attention to the voices around you, because even the priest thought she was drunk and she's being ridiculed by the other wife and the whole bit. And then she makes this promise. So there's another lesson, because she ended up keeping her promise. And it had to be very difficult to keep that promise.
I think about that too.
She made a promise to give her child back to the Lord, and she did exactly that. So another lesson Hannah taught me was, don't make promises you can't keep. Be real careful what you promise. Don't make promises you can't keep. And then when she did, when the priest said to her that to go in peace and that the Lord is going to grant you what it is, and she believed it. So lesson number 3, Hannah, when the Lord speaks into your life and you recognize him, believe him and behave accordingly. Because what she did, she went on as if it was already done. She had stopped eating. She was so distraught. But she started eating. She lay with her husband, and then here comes Samuel. So, and then she took Samuel back. Then I'm jumping over a lot of pieces, but then I also looked at Hannah's prayer. And at my last Bible study, we talked about this prayer where she just glorifies the Lord. It just talks about how great he is and how sovereign he is. And the question was asked, what did she not talk about in that prayer? She never once mentioned Samuel. She never once mentioned the son, because the prayer was about God. It was not about the blessing. It was about how great he was. So there's lesson number 4. It's like she never lost focus on where her healing was coming from. So the big lesson for everybody with Hannah's story is, because we all experience some kind of barrenness. We all experience some kind of barrenness about something, whether it's you lose a job or you lose a loved one, you lose a marriage, you lose whatever. That Hannah is telling you what to do. She is telling you what to do. And what did the Lord do for Hannah? She ended up with a house full of kids. She went from barren to a bunch of kids. Who could do that for her but the Lord? So once you get Hannah's story under your belt, then you start looking at all your stories a little different, you know, and then it changes the way you study all the stories in the Bible.
So what I'm hearing you say is that, by the way, that was a great mini lesson. I was totally swept up. I was like, wait, I'm supposed to be teaching something. She's teaching. That was really good. She was like, four quick lessons from
She was
Hannah.
preaching.
She did a good job. What I'm hearing you say is that you find deep and wide reasons that affirm your faith and your right now life experience in the words of the Bible. And so it's interesting because nobody, I don't think, maybe I'm forgetting, I don't want to besmirch the other people that participated in this so far, but we weren't really talking about, these stories from the Bible, these testimonies from the Bible are part of my reasons to believe. And the reason, okay, I'm going to say reason a lot of times, the cause for that, I think, is if you don't fundamentally believe that the Bible is true, then taking those stories as real life stories and stories that testimonies, I don't like to say stories because it makes it sound fictional, testimonies that can impact your life, it's a two-step process, right? You have to believe that the book holds truth. And it's interesting because one of the things there were several prompts. I sent an email out with prompts to help you because I love a good prompt. Like, don't just leave me to my own devices. Give me like a lane. One of the prompts was testimony of people around you. What I love that you did is you treat the people in that Bible as people in your life, teaching you something and affirming your own testimony. Yeah. And it is really interesting if you open yourself up to reading the Bible in that way. What you said at the very beginning of your time, there is a thread of truth that resounds with your own personal experience, which is something special because Hannah lived thousands of years ago. And to have a thread that feels very common to what you're experiencing right now in an extremely different time and place on the planet, there's something to that.
It's the same God.
It is the same God.
Same God. He did it for Hannah. Why wouldn't he do it for you? Or you, William? Why wouldn't he? See?
That's good. Hi, I'm Holly, and I'm the primary teacher and author here at Study with Friends. My education is from a Reformed theological seminary, so you'll see that come through as we teach and study together. But on occasion, I'll introduce concepts from other doctrines when I think they shed light on the material, just so that we can have a well-rounded understanding of lots of different perspectives on the text. We strongly believe that you should know and understand who's teaching you the Bible, and so you can learn more about me at studywithfriends.org or zondervan.com. We're just really glad you're here.